What have you found through your process, Rob, on the indicators themselves?
Well, we talk about our kind of not paradoxical, inverse kind of paths in trading. You started with a longer term investing and stock trading background. I started with day trading options. So for me, what I found early on was I tried to do too much, too many tools, more than I needed. And that was just a distraction. So over the years, and as I learned through pain and gain, I simplified as much as possible, and that's the bread and butter that I stick with now. It's like simple, simple, simple. For Trader Genius and day trading, I use the Casual Trader, exclusively and primarily, supplemented with a lot of the other simple tools, which the genius behind them. And guys, if you're ever wondering why the club's called Trader Genius, is because there's genius baked into the tools and the software that we use. Like, they're simple: red, green, on, off. And yeah, if you can follow a simple roadmap, you don't need to worry about necessarily the contour lines. You just need to worry about turning left and right, right? That's what I find with the indicators that fuel my trends. And one of the biggest benefits from expanding, and we're going to do a stock trading workshop later this week with the club, because a lot of folks who started with day trading like me are interested in getting into stocks and ETFs. I found that as I opened up my aperture and went to the larger time scale, through the practice and the training, the tools that carry over very well from quick 1 to 2 minute trades to 1 to 2 week trades, they're even easier to use and easier to base a system of simple logic rules around, because they do have that same power and simplicity in their design, but there's no immediacy. You remove that sense of urgency to get in and out of a trade on the longer time scale. So the right tool for the expected time scale of the trade also matters, not just the price action. But if I'm thinking gold's going to go up by 100% in the next 10 years, well, the day trading tools probably aren't going to help me with that. So think about the time scale as well with those tools. And when you set the standard, set your standard for as simple a collection of tools, a toolkit, as possible to get the job done and, again, be effective. But yeah, that's tools in a nutshell. I mean, we could probably talk all day about those, but what about the tools that we don't see, brother? What about the information that we take in to our trading system and use as intel to fuel those entry and exit decisions? How important is intel as a component to your system?
Intel is important as long as it's from the right source, a vetted source. I think the information that we pull in and the intel that we get, I think it's the sneakiest. I think it's the stuff that kind of worms our way into our brain, that allows that fear and that greed and that hope, or that FOMO. That's probably a pretty key one, that kind of comes in like, oh man, I had my mind made up that I wasn't going to trade this, or I was going to trade it, and then I just read this article, or I just talked to a friend who read some article. And a lot of this intel that we get are from paid entertainers. We'll use the news, for instance. I mean, those folks are entertainers. They don't have you and I's individual best interest in mind. They are there to work for a network who works for somebody or something else. A great example, if you've ever seen Billions, the latest season, I think it's the latest season of Billions. One of his competitors who used to work for him goes on the news and makes a statement about what they're going to do. Well, that prompts him to change his behavior, and then he goes on to the network as well to say something else and to change behavior. And really, at the end of the day, people are buying and selling this. I forget what it was, maybe oil or natural gas or something like that. People are buying and selling based on these tips, when really those two just have a personal vendetta against each other, and they're trying to one up each other, and they're taking people down with them. And that may seem like a glorified example that's not really based in reality. But ask yourself, is it? Because this type of manipulation happens all the time. There's all sorts of people around different deals and whatnot that leak information to cause certain types of behavior to happen before they're supposed to happen, or to keep them from happening so they can get an edge. This world of finances and trading is about milliseconds. There's that those folks that went and bought warehouses that were closer to the stock market when the internet first came out, so they could get their trades in just microseconds ahead of other people to get that edge. So that stuff exists out there, and you got to ask yourself, the intel that you're gathering, is it coming from a vetted, qualified source that has your best interest in mind? Because nobody else can trade like you. Nobody knows exactly what your goals are or what your style is. That's something that you develop over time, and it's completely individually to you. So much like you were talking about, brother, with the biohackers, and using that common sense to kind of decide, hey, this makes sense for me or this doesn't make sense for me, is really, really important, because lots of time you're being manipulated. Well, perfect example, it's not really intel, but just the lack of consistency. We had earnings reports, not too long ago. And on one day, two different major companies, some of the largest companies in the world, both reported earnings within a day or two of each other. Both of them had exceptional earning reports. Why did one jump up like $40 overnight and the other one dropped $50 overnight, even though they have both exceptional reports? So where is that intel coming? Where it's already baked in and where it hasn't been baked in? How does that get leaked, Rob? Where are they getting their intel from?
It could be, there's no reason to try to explain it or to try to predict it, because one, we can't predict, and we can't move the prices, as you said. And explanations would require some kind of forensic, analysis that I'm not equipped to do, and I don't think you have the resources to do either, brother. So guess what? It's a fool's errand. And a lot of the intel that's out there, a lot of the information that's out there is fool's gold, because there's all kinds of selling techniques. How hard is it to sell information? It's intangible. It costs you nothing to take it into your head, right? It's all presented for free. It must be good for you, right? Well, that's not always the way it works. And it's agenda driven. Most entities in this universe do things that are in their own self-interest. So why does one of those two stocks skyrocket? Because there's belief by all the people who have access to those overnight markets, which ain't us. There's belief that it's going to go up, or that they can make a profit on it. They wouldn't be buying those shares otherwise. Why did the other one sell? Well, most likely because there's a belief that it's not going to be that valuable. So get out now. Okay, cool. So that's about as far as I take my analysis of those big moves. Just watch the behavior, and it becomes like you said, it is like biohacking. At a certain point, I realized that intaking grains on a daily basis does not agree with my system. It puts me in a mind fog. It gives me headaches. It gives me body aches, and my digestion is all jacked up. Well, guess what? MSNBC is my grains. At a certain point, I turned it on, especially like last year when we had that big COVID downturn. I was like, oh, WTF, what is happening here? There's that guy, Jim Cramer. I can trust him. He's a former Marine. Yeah, okay. So I turned that on before my trading, and it turned out it wasn't good for me, just like grains. So testing. Your number one way to figure out if these habits and these standards for excellence, if they're actually working or not, is your testing, is your trade log. And what are you training and practicing towards? Are you practicing towards that standard of excellence? Again, check out that Blue Angel video. Watch all the videos on the Blue Angels, just how they do it. They've set a culture of excellence. And there is nothing that's so sacred to that team as far as personnel, gear, ideology, that can't be plucked and stricken from their team and just dropped in a heartbeat if it's not working, if it's not effective. And that's how they roll. And you and I, and hopefully everybody else will understand that those guys have a level of excellence in their performance that's pretty much unmatched throughout the world, or, is the top tier of the elite kind of performance. So what are you doing? I mean, we talked about dedication 2 weeks ago. Why would you dedicate yourself to anything but an excellent endeavor? And if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. So put it into practice. What is the training? What are you practicing? Are you practicing bad habits and gambles and listening to intel that's not really helpful and you can't verify the intent or the agenda behind perhaps stock manipulation? Maybe that is, what's hurting you and holding you back is your lack of ability to actually commit to the practice. So view it as technique drills. It's tactical drills. Like, Jess, man, how did you become proficient at giving an IV to one of your soldiers under fire?
Practice, 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 and create as real world conditions as possible. And in addition to that, though, is not accepting failure and not accepting even minute failure. Having that high bar where it gets hit. One of the things that hit me from that Blue Angel talk is he was talking about how every second you've got 65 frames that you're processing. How is that possible? That's 65 opportunities a second to capture something or a moment to change your behavior. And so being specific about that high bar of excellence and practicing it as real as possible. And I'll just jump right back to the Intel thing real quick to kind of tie part of this together. Is you were talking about how, well, there's a belief that that stock was going to go up, the one that gapped up after its earnings. There was a belief that that stock was going to go down after earnings. Well, those are beliefs. How consistent are those beliefs? I mean, one of the biggest things that I hear from traders, especially experienced traders, is looking for that consistency. And if you're running around chasing everybody's belief, if you've ever been married or had a roommate or just, growing up in your house with your mom or your dad, your brothers, sisters, if you're trying to follow their beliefs to create alignment for you to capitalize on something, whether that's love, attention, affection, acceptance, whatever it is, that's an ever chasing target. That's you're always behind the 8 ball on that, or you're guessing. And a lot of traders fall into that prospecting. So it hasn't happened yet, but I think this is going to happen, so I'm going to act. When we are wanting to set a high bar of excellence or a high standard for ourselves, we need to be able to create metrics. We need to be able to create something that's concrete, that isn't this wandering target. So from an intel source, for me, brother, is using the raw data and looking at the actual raw data using behavior-driven indicators. So it's not about the belief, it's about the actual behavior or the action of that, and then stepping in to take advantage of that situation or to be effective in that situation. So yeah, sure, on the battlefield, I carry IVs with me, but I'm not running around sticking dudes with IVs while they're trying to operate, predicting that they're going to get hurt. Oh, hey guys, we can't actually go take down this house right now. We need to all lay down, roll up your sleeves. I need to get these IVs in you, piggyback them, and then you can go do it. So I can be prepared. Well, that's not really going to be effective. That actually puts everybody at a higher risk because of doing that. So really being able to not be predictive in nature and have information that allows you to maintain or work towards that high bar of excellence and be able to stay focused on exactly where you're wanting to go with it. So that's kind of the organization of it. But tactically, Rob, what does that look like? Being able to process information, kind of reflect on it, refine, and continue to move forward.
So on a tactical level, from one trade to the next, the log is the most essential tool. It's your best friend, and your log can be customized and built out. it's not as helpful to have an oversimplified log, which is just, hey, what was my entry price? What was my exit price? And how much money did I make? That's a little too linear, and you're not really getting under the surface of how to improve. You're not giving yourself the feedback you need to get better the next repetition. So take that simple premise and just build out from there. Okay, obviously, what are the most important decisions? We talk about them all the time. My entry, my exit. Record the price for each, and then build out. And the way that you and I do it is our logs, and pretty much everybody I know in Trader Genius, our logs reflect the simple checklist of our rules. And that's the framework of an effective trade log. So maybe you've got you're a stock trader, and you have middling success, 50 to 55% success rate and gains, right? If you just put down your 10 simple rules for entering and exiting and gave yourself a little checkbox, a little report card, right, if you will, track whether you followed your rules on each trade, diligently log each trade. After 100 repetitions, you're going to have a decent enough sample size to say, okay, well, when I miss rules, obviously the results are starting to not pan out. But when I follow all my rules, it's working out really effective. And that's where I'm 75% successful, when I have all the check boxes checked. So if you go through that simple exercise, and you can do it off of, bring up your Yahoo Finance app and just paper trade Apple, Apple closed at 126 or something today. Okay, that's my entry point. And then a few days later, that's your exit point. You can do it that simply. So do 100 or 1,000 repetitions of that and see if it's effective or not. The other key component to that tactical level is getting the feedback you need in terms of qualitative feedback. What's going on with all these habits? Were your habits in line? Were you lack of sleep? Those kinds of things get teased out in the journal section of your trade log. We've seen so many fellow traders in the club, outside the club, do way better and increase their performance and enable themselves to set their standard higher by giving themselves that quality feedback. And, we're both coaches, man. Like, if you're out there and you don't know how to construct that checklist, or you don't know quite how to use the trade log, getting a mentor or a coach to just show you those ropes and give you the basically shortcut, not shortcut it. That's got a negative connotation as of last week, but kind of kickstart you in the right direction and show you the ropes in an effective way, to get you started and get some traction, and really start to curtail those unhelpful impulses which might be guiding your trading decisions.